listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Easy steps to writing a great academic task 1. Hello there, students. My name is Ben Worthington. We are going to look in detail at how to write a great academic task 1. We're going to look at the steps you have to take, and you will learn some invaluable vocabulary for your task 1 questions. Now, I'm really excited about academic task 1 because this is something that I've been preparing students for a long time. And I basically know sort of like the questions that most students have, like what data do I include? How do I choose the information? And what language am I going to use? And how do I organize it? And I've corrected so many essays. I know a lot of the common pitfalls as well. So I'm quite excited to share all of this with you today. Before we jump into it though, I want to mention something that you've probably heard about. Probably. I don't think there's anybody on this earth that hasn't heard about it, and it's caused the coronavirus. And before we jump into this episode, I want to just share some thoughts for the students who are in lockdown, that have had their exam postponed, and probably going through a bit of a tough time. There's a few things I want to say. That China's already gone through this. China is ahead of us, and what's happening now is they've got test centers with increased capacity. They're racing to catch up with the delay. The higher education institutions have been more flexible with regards to the grades that they're going to be accepting. There's been like a general understanding of what's going on. Second thing is that, make the most of the situation. How do we make the most of it? Well, we've probably got a lot more time now, so we can really aim for going for that band 7. We can really get together a schedule, get in place a system that's going to help us get to that band 7 or band 8 or band 9, whatever our goal is. So what I'm trying to say is that we can change this disadvantage into an advantage. And you've really got time now just to get your head down, study. And how are you going to do this? Well, get a system in place, get organized. As I said before, it's not the goal of band 7 that's going to get you to band 7. It's the system that you put in place, the schedule that you implement. It's how you organize each day. And if you are in lockdown, a schedule, a routine is important. Right. I don't want to get into this anymore. Sorry, I know I'm going a bit off topic here. A few more points. Number 1, we've launched the forum.IELTSPodcast.com. We've got Daphne and myself, possibly Ellen, answering students' questions. We've extended course access, so if you buy now, you've got till December. Also, we are offering $50 discount coupons as well. So basically, we're just trying to help you make the most of this situation. And the course will do this. It'll get a system in place which is easy to improve. It's fast to improve because you're getting the feedback. Let's jump into it now. So when we are looking at IELTS Academic Task 1, we're going to be faced with either a line graph, a bar chart, a pie chart, a table, a process, a flow chart, a cycle diagram, or a map. Or even a combination of, multiple task visual, it's called. Even a combination, for example, 2 pie charts, a pie chart and a bar graph, a table and a pie chart. So really, you need to be prepared for writing for all types. You do not want to get a surprise. In the online course, in the past, we only had pie charts and bar charts. Now we've extended this and we've got flow diagrams and maps so as to make all the students who go through the course supremely prepared. This is important. Now, you must understand what you see in front of you. For example, I used to see this a lot, that somebody would describe a pie chart using dynamic line graph language. I'm not going to say it's a train crash, but I'm going to say it is incorrect. For example, for a pie chart, you've got to use certain language as you do for maps and so on. Now, there is a rotation, okay? These types of tasks are rotated. So do not master one certain type. Do not master just pie charts and bar charts. Master all of the three. Now, this is really important, this next tip, that this is a challenge probably in your own language to describe what you see, to describe a graph, to describe a chart, to put it into text. Even in your own language, it's going to be a challenge. This is why I strongly believe that IELTS Academic Task 1 is an essential. For this, you need to learn essential exam skills. Because not only are you going to be doing something that is challenging in your own language, you're going to be doing it in 20 minutes, and you're going to have to basically fulfill the criteria in front of you. So just let me summarize that again. This is an exam skill as much as it is a language skill. Just bear that in mind. So if you are facing this and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, this is insanely difficult, just remember that even in your own language it's going to be difficult, and now you're doing it in a different language. It's not your native English, it's not your native language. Just bear that in mind and give yourself a break. The next point I want to mention is that you need to understand what is required of you. It doesn't matter whether it's a pie chart, a line graph, a map. You'll always get this prompt, which is summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So if it says you'll have to point out, well, basically if it's saying summarize the main features, you're going to have to pull the most relevant information. You're going to have to decide what to comment on, and you're going to need and to report about it, you're going to have to select the right numbers. Okay, don't go into list form. Okay, and also to make comparisons, you're going to have to be able to evaluate if these data sets are similar or different. Now, keep this in mind when we are building the structure, when we are planning our answer. Now, just a few points. Again, I'm going to mention avoid listing the data. Listing the data has nothing to do with reporting, selecting, and summarizing. If you're just listing it, then it's going to be an incredibly boring piece of writing, and you've added nothing there. So remember, we've got to compare, contrast, analyze the minimums and the maximums, identify and describe the trends, the overall picture here. A very important non-language skill here is to develop the ability to group the data. Group the data basically means looking for points in the graphic that are similar. So if you see like 4 or 5 months with similar values, bunch them into a group. Okay. Likewise, if you find 2 or 3 pie chart segments with similar numbers, maybe it's 11%, maybe it's 12% and 14%, then group those all together. and we've got a beautiful sentence, or the foundation of a beautiful sentence, because we can say something like, I don't know, geography, history, and economics more or less had similar percentages or similar sized segments in the graphic shown. For example, we've grouped the data there. Now, some language points that I want to mention. Superlatives are essential. And I've said this before, that superlatives, if you need to master these. How do you master them? Well, quick 3-step process. 1, you review the grammar rules. 2, you do some online grammar quizzes. 3, you write out some sentences, maybe 10, 20 sentences. Translate them into your own language, or translate them back, or even find perfect sentences online, translate them into your own language, and then a few days later translate them back, or a few hours later translate them back and forth, back and forth. Final step, it's actually a 4-step process, get some feedback. This is a fast way to improve, but there's no point getting feedback unless you've actually practiced this a lot beforehand. Okay, practice it. And another reason why superlatives are insanely important is because they will add a richness to your speaking exam, and also learn the contrasts as well, the comparisons, conjunctions, comparative conjunctions are insanely valuable here. And this is another language skill that you can use in your speaking and probably in your writing task too as well. Now then, as much as I've been talking about IELTS Academic Task 1, we must remember we shouldn't really spend more than 20 minutes, and because it's only worth 30% of our writing score. So therefore, it's completely logical just to assign 20 minutes to this and get it done. Now, how do we distribute our time? Here is my recommendation. Test this recommendation. If it works for you, beautiful. If it doesn't, then start identifying what does work for you, what doesn't work for you. My advice is to spend between 2 or 3 minutes planning, selecting the information, writing on the graphic, looking for those outliers, looking for the general trend, looking for the groups of information, and getting it together. Then the next section, once we've planned it, then we can put like maybe numbers on just to organize how we are going to write or what we're going to write. Then 10 to 15 minutes of transferring our plan into our report, into our answer. And then a couple of minutes at the end to proofread and fixing minor mistakes. If you've been wise and you've gotten feedback on your essay, then you will probably know where you most commonly lose points. For example, if you lose points in the superlatives, for example, and you've finished writing your essay, when you're scanning it, look for the superlatives and just review them, okay? And you will need to know which are your weak spots, especially if you're preparing in a hurry and you haven't had time to really master certain grammar points or certain spelling rules. In this case, getting feedback will help you identify where you're going to lose points. So when you're doing your checking, at the end, you can focus in on those areas and then correct them. Okay? Now, when we're planning our structure, here is some advice to keep in mind. When we read the title, okay, and just stop and think for a second and just make sure that we've read it correctly. Okay, this is so common that a student would trip up just by misinterpreting the title. Okay, and they will maybe add a year, or maybe they will just forget the second line of the title of the chart. So just bear this in mind. Okay? Second one, develop the skill of choosing the main features. Which are the biggest segments? What's the biggest change in the map? Is it the construction of new buildings? Is it the new road that has been placed in this new map? Is it the fact that, 3 segments dominate the pie chart? Is it the fact that there's a general trend up and down from, a general trend from 20,000 up to 300,000? What's the general trend here? As I said before, this is an exam skill, and you need to look at previous Academic Task 1 answers, look at previous report writings, economics, what's it called now? The Economics Daily Chart, that's it, the Economist Daily Chart has some of the best report writing you'll see. Day in, day out, they're just pumping out charts. Also, hopefully, if you're following the news, you'll be looking at these exponential graphs, okay, and these logarithmic graphs and all of this, looking at testing cases per country, all of this, if you're geeking out on this. And it's just a good idea just to be aware of snatching some of the vocabulary that you're seeing day in, day out. Final point. Not only are we going to another point. Not only are we going to be looking for the maximums, the minimums, the peaks, the troughs, but we're going to look for the general pattern. Is it going upward? Is it going downward? Now, when we're planning our paragraphing, we're aiming for an introduction. In this introduction, we could probably put in a second sentence. Well, the introduction is going to be paraphrasing the title, what we can see, and then we're going to squeeze in the summary sentence, which is going to give us the story. Okay, it's going to tell us what's happening, and then at least 2 body paragraphs. This goes to the organization of your essay. Now, if you've got a bar chart and a pie chart, then obviously we can dedicate a paragraph to each one. If we've got maybe 12 months of the year and a line graph and a bar chart, and they're on top of each other, again, develop a paragraph for each one. Also, if we've just got a very detailed line graph and no other chart, then we can split it up, half and half, or we've got to decide how we're going to split it up. And the best way is, if you've got a lot of data, just split it up by half and half. If there isn't that much data, if you've got 2 graphs, obviously a paragraph for each one. When we are writing our introduction, we should follow this structure: what, where, and when. What the graph illustrates, where the data is set, and when was the data set. Okay, was this 2020? Was it 1998? Where was this? Was this in Russia, in Scotland, in the UK, in primary schools? So the general structure: what, where, and when. Now, for great body paragraphs, as we've said before, we want to be comparing data points. We want to be making contrasts. We probably want to include exceptions if there are any. On the online course, we have some horrible graphs that do not show a single pattern. And maybe you could say it is a little bit evil, but the point I want to make, the point why I put these questions, these horrible graphs into the course, is because that is the general pattern. The pattern here is that it's completely random. You cannot say that there's a general trend upwards or a general downward trend. The general trend or the general pattern is chaos. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, of course, we should be using different transitions, cohesive devices, and connectors. So this is what I was talking about earlier. Conjunctions, or comparison conjunctions, which compare, such as like whereas, while, although, just these ones where we can really get compare different data points. Sales in the first quarter were generally above 200,000, whereas in the second quarter, all the months showed sales at less than 100,000, except July, where sales shot up to 500,000. Yeah. So whereas is a very useful one, also while, and we can even use although. Be careful though, sometimes I see however, it's not the best. No, the one I want to say is on one hand, on the other hand. However is borderline, it's not too bad, because we use however when we're sort of like compare it, or when we've got two different viewpoints. But we can also say for like contrasting two different pieces of information. Yeah. However, sales in the third quarter were considerably lower. The one that I dislike is on the one hand and on the other hand. This one used to drive me absolutely bananas, because this is clearly when we're weighing up two opinions. On the one hand, England has an amazing, stuck here, an amazing catalogue of luxury sports cars such as Aston Martin, Jaguar, McLaren. On the other hand, the engineering capacity of Germany is considered considerably greater. Okay, so sort of like two different opinions. We cannot say in our academic task 1, on the one hand, geography, physics and biology have 20% each, whereas on the other hand, French, German and religious studies had 5%. No, because these are not contrasting viewpoints. Okay, this is just data. This reminds me of another point. Do not add information. So if you see a downward trend in rainfall in the Sahara Desert, for example, on your chart, don't mention anything about global warming. That's not what the chart is about. The chart is just showing rainfall in the desert and the 30-year trend or 12-month trend, whatever it is. So do not add information, especially if it's related to your opinion or as to why you think something might be happening on the chart. Final one that we're going to go into now. Learn a variety of sentence structures. Okay? As I've said, superlatives, comparatives, sentence that contrast, conjunctions that help you set up this contrast. In the Academic Task 1 course, we share specific tactics for how to select the information. We go into it in a lot more detail. And we've also got a whole list of sentences that you can use to contrast information. 2 final points. Keep your writing formal. The amount of times I saw an informal sentence or, for example, a contraction, it was surprising. We have to keep this as formal as possible. Just be aware of that. Keep an eye on that, because it's easy to slip, especially if we are basically downloading the information in our mind. Because the spoken English that we've got in our head is probably going to be informal, because just that's how we speak. Final one, tenses. Tenses are really important, and the ability to choose the right tense and to transition between the tenses is insanely important. We've got a few podcasts specifically about this. So just keep that in mind when you're preparing. Review your use of tenses. Perhaps listen to those past podcasts we've done. And as we've done before, maybe you want to get some sentences already, translate them into your own language, translate them back into English a few days later, and then maybe do some online quizzes. Just review the rules, review the structures, and also once you've done that, then send in your work for some feedback. Or if you're in a hurry, then maybe you just want to get feedback straight away, and with that feedback you can identify the key areas that you need to work on, and this just speeds up your whole improvement process. That's about it from me today. If you've got any questions, you can send us an email, ben@IELTSPodcast.com. As I said at the beginning, we've got the forum, forum.IELTSPodcast.com. We've extended your course access, so you've got till December. If you buy the course now, you've also got till December. We don't know how long this corona thing is going to last, but we do know that we're going to take advantage of it, and we're going to use it to our advantage and keep working. We've also got the online classes now, which are going really well. Quite enjoying that. And in the online classes, I'm testing out new material. We're going through previous material. We're looking at phrase banks, actually. It's quite interesting, and how we can use phrase banks in our essay writing. That's it from me today. If you know anybody who's struggling with the IELTS, then please get them to listen to the podcast or forward on our URL. And yeah, just keep moving forward and make the most of the situation. Take care.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.